NFR Extra is a weekly podcast that focuses on the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo and features icons that embody the rodeo and Western lifestyle.
I am your host, Nevada Caldwell, and this is NFR Extra, episode 49, and Las Vegas is starting to open, and so are live sports. And out of the chutes is the South Point Arena and Equestrian Center, as they host the PBR Monster Energy Team Challenge, featuring 48 of the world's top pro bull riders, including 2019 bull riding world champion Sage Kimzey, and 2019 All-Around Champion Stetson Wright. So with all that going on, what a better time to sit down with Steve Stallworth, General Manager of the South Point Arena and Equestrian Center, as we talk about Steve's beginning in the Las Vegas community, his involvement in the evolution of Las Vegas entertainment and its venues, Michael Gaughan, and a lot more. Make sure to give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Spotify, or wherever you listen to NFR Extra. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Up next, Brylan Bentley's Rodeo News of the Week.
This is Brylan's Bull, the Rodeo News of the Week.
This week's Rodeo News of the Week brought to you by George Taylor on the Cowboy Channel.
Hi, George, and welcome.
Hi, Amy. Thanks. Good to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. We have a lot to get to, but let's start with what information you can give us concerning events through June.
Yeah, I think the most exciting thing that I can tell you is while it seems like we've missed a lot of rodeos, we still have about 90% of the payouts left in the season. So while we've had 137 rodeos canceled, we've got a lot on the board, and we've got 50 to 55 in June that are currently scheduled, and 100 on the schedule for July. So that time that we're coming up to is really important. And as we're looking at this, you know, a lot of the contestants are asking us, George, do we need to expand the season or extend the season? What are we going to do about rodeo counts and all that type of stuff? We're going to really wait because of the numbers that I just told you. We're going to wait until no later than July 1st before we can tell everybody what we're planning to do for the full year.
At this point, what are the COVID guidelines or ground rules that will have to be followed?
Yeah, I think, you know, we're going to have to really take that responsibility seriously as we begin to rodeo again so that nobody stops us, even though we're frustrated with a lot of those things. And it's really going to be about, you know, where we use masks, how we disinfect, how we compartmentalize different production personnel, and really strive to keep ourselves safe so that we don't have any COVID instances as a result. And probably one of the biggest things is we'll have to screen some of our contestants as we get ready to go there.
In 2020, more than 7,000 kids will compete for the coveted 750 spots at the Junior World Finals in Las Vegas, presented by Yeti. Each qualifier will go head-to-head for more than $500,000 and a championship buckle in the biggest rodeo youth event in the country. This could be the first stop on the road to a pro rodeo card and a gold buckle in Vegas. Find out how your son or daughter can earn the right to compete against the best at the Junior World Finals, presented by Yeti.
Hello, I'm Reno Rosser, and this is Cotton Rosser. Welcome to NFR Extra.
With nearly 30 years of experience, Steve Stallworth currently serves as the General Manager of the South Point Arena, Equestrian Center, and Prefert Pavilion. His experience also includes being the Vice President and General Manager for the Orleans Arena and Associate Director of the Thomas Mack Center, Sam Boyd Stadium, and Cox Pavilion. A 1987 UNLV graduate, Stallworth, being the rebel that he is, played quarterback for the UNLV Rebels football team from 1982 to 86, alongside four-time Pro Bowler, NFL quarterback Randall Cunningham. Mr. Hodges, here we go, man. These interviews just keep cranking, and you know we're in 2020, and who knows what to expect with this year, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And the individual we have here, pretty integral to Las Vegas, the entertainment side. He's got his hands in all kinds of things over the past 30 plus years in the business. we are joined by General Manager of the South Point Arena, Steve Stallworth.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me, man. I've listened to your podcast before, and I'm honored to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you on here, cool man. I tell you what, there is nobody that I work for that I like any better coming to that South Point, working either tough deal, working the bullfights there for the PBR, doing anything you got, buddy. That is the prime rib of rodeo.
I love that. Hey, that might be our new tagline, man. The prime rib of rodeo, South Point. I love it.
That's it.
New tagline, Robbie.
Michael like that, won't he?
Absolutely. Love it.
Well, hey, let's get to know Steve. You know, I know Steve, but our listeners probably don't. And this is a good time to get to know him. You know, there's a lot of people that we brought on this show that he's connected to, as they'll find out through this interview. Steve, where were you raised? Where'd you come from?
You know what? That is a good question. Where did you come from? Well, I tell you, I grew up in a small town, boys, Yuma, Arizona. Small town in Arizona down in the southwest corner. We were right on the border of Mexico. There you go, Rob. Exactly. Right down on the corner of Mexico and California. All my family's still there. I was born and raised there. My mom is still there. My dad was married 5 times. My mom 4 times. All of the exes, all of the kids, they're all still in Yuma. So I've got brothers, sisters, half brothers, half sisters, stepbrothers, stepsisters everywhere down in Yuma. So, and they're all successful. They're all doing great. Very proud of my upbringing there. But, I played sports I played sports all growing up. And then in 1982, I was a senior in high school, and I got recruited to play football, and I took a few recruiting trips and came to UNLV at the time that we had a brand new coach, a guy named Harvey Hyde. It was his very first year in 1982, so I was the first recruiting class that he brought in. Fell in love with Las Vegas, and the rest is history.
So, yeah, and we're getting ready to talk about that, Steve. So, you know, that was just the stepping stone, and from what I understand, there's kind of a happening at that time when you're coming to UNLV, right? There's the arena being built. A few years later, you find out there's this thing called the NFR. Were you aware of what the NFR was when you were at UNLV?
Well, I'll tell you my quick story. So I got to Vegas June 10th, 1982. I was 17 years old. It was my very first day here. June 11th, 1982, I was working the Holmes-Cooney fight for a guy named Dennis Finfrock, who you guys may remember back in the day.
Yep.
Dennis was the UNLV wrestling coach at the time, and he also had all the ushers at the fights. So we worked for Dennis there, and Dennis, believe it or not, is from Yuma, Arizona. Small world story there.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, long story short, went to school, and then, of course, in 83 or so, they started building the Thomas and Mack Center. Actually, I think they were building it then in 82. Yeah, they would have had to have been. Yeah, they were building it in 82, and, of course, on campus, we're watching this humongous thing rise through the ashes. And it's a great story. Dennis Finfrock and Pat Christensen, they were both wrestling coaches, and they ended up dropping the wrestling program, and UNLV said to both of them, hey, listen, good news, bad news. Bad news is we're dropping the wrestling program. Good news is we're building this arena. Do you guys want to go run it?
Now, both of you guys, I don't mean to interrupt you, but what was the covered arena? What was the building in Las Vegas then? Where did things happen?
That's right. When I came on my recruiting trip, I went to a Runnin' Rebel game that was unbelievably exciting because there were only 6,500 seats, and it was at the convention center, and they called it the Rotunda.
Yeah.
So anybody prior to 1982 would remember the Rotunda. It looked like a spaceship rising up out of the ground at the convention center.
Really?
But that's where the Runnin' Rebels played, and, when they built the Thomas and Mack Center, they built it as a basketball-only venue with concrete seats all the way to the floor. And one of the first things Dennis Finfrock did is he went back to the legislature and said, hey, we need to tear out these concrete seats and put in retractable seats so we can do other events. And of course, I don't think he was even thinking about the rodeo back then, but that move right there is what allowed us to bring the rodeo in back in the early 80s.
Let's take a quick pause. We'll return in a few moments.
Hi, I'm 23-time world champion cowboy Trevor Brazil, and you're listening to NFR Extra.
120 of the best cowboys and barrel racers rode into Las Vegas last December and left $10 million richer. The chase for 2020 has already begun, and all champions are hungry for gold. Be sure to follow your favorite cowboys, barrel racers, and local rodeos all season long. It all leads to one place, the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo. Learn more at NFRExperience.com. This is the NFR. This is Vegas.
We are back with Steve Stallworth, General Manager of the South Point Arena and Equestrian Center. Hey, Steve, so you're coming to UNLV, and we're getting ready to tailor this into kind of your career, but what were you besides playing football? What was your focus? Like, what were you studying at the time, or what did you end up graduating with?
Well, Nevada, I was studying trying to be a pro football player, right? I mean, Isn't that what that's what every kid wants to study when they get in? But then I realized I got caught up and ended up backing up a guy named Randall Cunningham, and realized how good he was. So I figured I better buckle down and get an education, man, because I saw what it took. But I actually majored in communications, and I minored in English, and I wanted to be in the advertising and the PR business. And that's kind of where I started my career at R&R Advertising right out of college.
Oh, man, I did not know that. That's nice. Really? So you're right in the hotbed, and this is, Rob, you're going to find this. I mean, you could listen to a conversation we've had, or you're just getting ready to find out what Steve was experiencing. So what started to happen for you, your career, let's say late 80s, right after you graduated? Like, how's that late 80s start to transpire for you with the event business?
Well, you bet. So I worked at R&R Advertising right out of college, and then I went and sold radio advertising for a guy named Tom Hum here in town. And the Running Rebels were on fire. I mean, I had a lot of friends working at the Thomas and Mack Center, a lot of people, and a guy named Mark Prouse, who you all know, at the time was the director of sponsorships at the Thomas and Mack Center. He left the Thomas and Mack to go to Tacoma and run the Tacoma Dome. So when he left, there was a job open there, and a guy named Ron Drake hired me for that job, and I started there, 1990 or so. UNLV had just won a national championship. We were the only arena in the market.
Jerry days?
That was in the Jerry Tarkanian days, Robbie, absolutely. And selling sponsorships, all you had to do was pick up the phone, man. It wasn't real difficult back then. That's right. It was all good, man. I learned quickly after that, though, that it got a lot tougher. But it was a cool time in our history, and of course, the MGM Grand Garden didn't open until '93, so we had a little bit of a running start. And then, of course, after that, I mean, this town just went crazy. I think Mandalay Bay's Arena opened in '96 or '97.
Yep.
Then the Orleans Arena, we brought that around in 2003. The Joint came on, during that time at the Hard Rock. So there was just a frenzy of activity, but it was amazing back in those days when we were the only property in town. I mean, we had obviously every event, that came through the city was at the Thomas and Mack Center.
Yeah, but it's not just a normal situation that you're in, because first of all, you're attached to a couple facilities, right? Thomas Mack Center, Sam Boyd Stadium, MGM starting to happen right in the early 90s, but you're in a kind of a new, let's just call it a new think tank you're working with, right? As far as how to get events. Where does your role kind of play with that group, with the Pat Christensens and Drakes at the time that they were there? But in those 90s, man, how were you, Steve, tailoring what you were learning at that time? Because there was a lot of ingenuity going on with getting the business or getting events, right?
Absolutely. And I was very, very blessed to be with what is, I would still call the A team of venue management in not just Las Vegas, but maybe the whole western part of the country. I mean, if you look at all of the, let's call them the alumni that came from the Thomas and Mack Center and are still running facilities and running buildings and running sports organizations, I mean, it's just amazing
That is
how many,
strong.
Yeah, it's amazing how many guys went on to do what they did, from that world. And you know what? A lot of those guys were used to working over the years in a crowded marketplace, and that's a valuable skill to have, as you said, Nevada. I mean, the marketplace became crowded very, very quickly, and not only how are we going to attract events, how are we going to keep employees, how are we going to keep morale, how are we going to run profitable food and beverage operations, how are we going to take care of our biggest tenants, of course, the athletic department. So, but I mean, it was the most exciting 10 years of my life, and of course set me up for future success.
It's time to take a little break. To celebrate the 35th anniversary of the National Finals Rodeo in Las Vegas, LVE and PRCA present the top 35 most memorable moments.
It didn't take long for Louis Field to feel comfortable at the National Finals Rodeo's new digs, the Thomas & Mack Center. Field celebrated the move to Vegas in 1985 with 2 world championships, the bareback riding world title and the all-around gold buckle.
This is Louis Field riding for the world title. He could also be the first rough stock rider to win the coveted all-around championship title since the famous Larry Mayhap.
He doubled down again in 1986, winning both world championships again, then won his 3rd straight world all-around crown in 1987 to bring his gold buckle count to 5 in just 3 years. In addition to winning 5 world championships, Field was the first rough stock cowboy to reach the $1 million mark in career earnings. He also nabbed 2 NFR average titles in bareback riding. Field's solid team roping skills helped to earn him 3 Linderman Awards in his career. Louis Field was inducted into the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame as one of the all-time great all-around cowboys in 1992.
Hi, I'm Speed Williams, 8-time world champion team roper, and we're listening to the NFR Extra.
We are back with Steve Stallworth, General Manager of the South Point Arena and Equestrian Center. You're in a hotbed of activity that, if you're keeping your eyes open and your ears and you're listening, there's a lot going on that applies to going on. At what point did you start to see, because clearly, right, you wanted to be a pro football player. I don't think you necessarily saw yourself being in the event business, right? 10 years later or in the 90s. When did you start to think that I want to run a building? When did that start to go through your head?
Well, in the sort of mid-90s there too, there was a lot of activity in the West with arenas. America West Arena, which is where the Phoenix Suns played, was built. What they call now the Pond at Anaheim was being built. Salt Lake City, the new building up there, was being built. There was a lot of activity. The problem is, for a guy like me, if I wanted to run my own building, I had to leave the market. And I loved Vegas. I married a Vegas girl, and I wasn't going anywhere. So for me, I caught a huge, huge break, and that is when Michael Gaughan called me one day, and he said he wanted to build an arena at the Orleans Hotel and Casino. And this was in 2001, and I was a little bit honest with him at the time. I said, Mr. Gaughan, I'm not sure we need another arena in this town.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I was talking myself out of a job, and he said, no. He says, we're going to do it different. He goes, we're going to offer free parking. This is all about the locals. Free parking, $3 beers, $1 hot dogs, $1 popcorn. And it was the typical Michael Gaughan model. And, for me, honestly, the big man upstairs was watching down on me, because for me to be able to be involved in building my own building and sleep in my own bed and live in my own city was really a dream come true. What I didn't realize at the time was how blessed I was going to be for the next 20 years to work for Michael Gaughan. So forget about all the buildings and everything else, but working for this man has been a blessing in my life, and I'm very, very thankful for that opportunity.
Hey, where did you and Michael Gaughan first meet?
Oh, I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
Where did you and Michael Gaughan first meet? Like, where did you guys develop your relationship?
It was 2 ways. Number one, it was every day for 10 days for 10 years, I would say hi to Mr. Gaughan when he came to the rodeo.
Yep.
You know, and I'd shake his hand and welcome Mr. Gaughan and Mrs. Gaughan. And it was that, and then it was also selling him sponsorship and advertising for UNLV athletics. He has always been a longtime supporter of UNLV athletics and everything, you know, basketball, football, what have you. So the relationship wasn't, I wouldn't call it close, but you know, we had a great relationship in terms of just knowing who each other was. And
it wasn't a cold call, I guess.
It wasn't exactly a cold call, but I will tell you this: Pat Christensen is the one that told Michael Gaughan that I was ready for this opportunity, and that I could be the guy to help him get this thing going. So, you know, Pat Christensen was really the one that sold me to Michael to be able to do it.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
Well, I was just my history with Michael comes from sports also. You know, I was in NASCAR for a couple of years, and Brendan actually drove our car a little bit in the Busch Series.
Oh wow!
And, and I've always been a fan of Michael's. You ever notice whatever's cool, Michael's part of it? I don't mean that he latches onto it. That's not what I'm saying, but he just everything cool like that and things to help people and the Cowboys. So many stories we've done on this podcast of hey, if you had a PRCA card, you didn't have anything, you were broke, you could stay at the you know, Gold Coast, or Tuff Hedeman talking about Michael flying him home. And, you know, just what a phenomenal family. And just, I mean, they are the NFR, you know? I mean, here in Vegas, what would it be without those guys?
Absolutely, Robbie, and I am so blessed. I this is my 20th year working for Mr. Gaughan and Mrs. Gaughan and their whole family, and I've watched those kids grow up. And by the way, I've been here 20 years, and I'm one of the new guys still. I mean, I'm a new employee.
Yep.
I mean, he has people
loyalty
here.
Is a thing with them.
That's right. He has people here that have been with him for 40, 45 years. It's amazing.
So Steve, when you clearly you get this job, right? You get this new ship, and how lucky you are, because a lot of people get ships that have already been driven, and you're in this one that's just brand new, getting ready to hit the waters. How was that? Because I being in the facility business, it's always crazy. How was your first year with the new ship? I mean, there was some experiences, some ups and some downs. How was that first year?
Well, a couple things I would say to you. Number one, Nevada, and you know as well, because we were at the Thomas Mack Center together, for 10 years, I was trained that, you know, you got 3 bids for everything, and it's always the low bid. And, you know, and there's a certain bureaucracy that you have to deal with at a university. So when we built the Orleans Arena, I mean, it was 180 degrees from that. It was, Mr. Gaughan wants the best. He didn't care if it's the most expensive, and he's going to make a decision in about 12 seconds. So it was really, really mind-blowing for me that I would present things to him about, you know, building the arena, because I was there a year and a half. I was there before we even broke ground. So, you know, I was able to be part of that design, and, you know, I would bring certain things to him, whether it was the type of seating we had, or the type of flooring, or the type of trussing, or whatever it might be for that arena, and he'd let me make my case, and he'd say yes or no right there on the spot.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we probably spent $20 million more on that building than you know anybody would have. But I would argue that the Orleans Arena is still one of the nicest mid-size arenas in the country. Almost 20 years later.
Oh, I agree with you 100% on that, Steve. No doubt.
About the 12,000. What is that? 6 to 12,000. Is that
probably
what you consider mid-size?
Yeah, Robbie, I would say it's probably about 9,000 seats there for a concert, and then we were putting about 6,500, 7,000 people in there for hockey. And, you know, we, in Nevada, if you remember, we really went after, we brought minor league hockey back to Las Vegas.
Wranglers.
We brought the state high school championships back to Las Vegas after 19 years in Reno. You know, unfortunately for the MAC, I mean, we brought Disney on Ice and the circus and the Globetrotters, and, you know, we brought all the family shows. We did all the high school graduations along with Thomas and Mack Center. We did motorsports. We did 4 big motorsports events a year. So we had that thing cranking up, and we had it going. It was a fun ride for sure.
Yeah.
But to your point, we had to be creative. We had to do those kind of events because, going after the touring concert business was a huge challenge. We were in a crowded marketplace, and, for 5 years, we never got a Live Nation show. If you would have told me that back then, I wouldn't have even taken the job. But we had to be creative to get shows, and Mr. Gaughan allowed us to be creative, and we did, and we had a great run.
That's how you get better, right? Like, as I learned being in the event business, it's just the conveyor belt that just keeps coming at you, and you keep adapting, and and how you apply what you learned, and as long as you never get out of learning, you're always going to be living the event business pretty successfully.
This is so cool. This is the kind of stuff Vada and I talk about in between our sets with you guys, and the history that he's told me about, and I'll be dadgum if I'm not actually getting to talk to the people that, how many times we've sat there in between phone calls with our guests, and you've told me this stuff, and now it actually puts it into perspective, and I understand what's going on and how you guys work together, and some of the stuff, taking on Ticketmaster. I love those stories, guys, and I mean, people need to hear.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's funny because, we never lost our Thomas and Mack roots. We always worked together with those guys. In fact, when Thomas and Mack, right as I was walking out of the door of the Thomas and Mack, is when we brought ticketing in-house to the T&M UNLV tickets. And then when I got to the Orleans, I was very familiar with it. We brought UNLV tickets to the Orleans Arena, so we shared ushers, we shared staff. I mean, there's always been a great, what's the word? Collegiality, camaraderie, collegiality. They're all big words, Robbie. I don't know all those
collaboration,
words,
man. Let me spell that.
Right. and where we really would notice, for us, we didn't think we were doing anything out of character or anything, but when we would go to these national conferences, these arena managers conferences, and these big music conferences, the other markets and the other buildings in America were just shocked at how well we all got along together, and we drank together, and we partied together, and we collaborated together, and it's not like that in every other city. There's amazing competition. I mean, you just look down in L.A. right now and look at what happens between the Forum in Inglewood and the Staples Center in L.A., and I mean, that'll give you an idea what it's like in every city in America.
Yep.
But we've always had great collaboration in this city, and and it shows when Las Vegas Events brings these big signature events to our city, and venues like ours are able to tie into that. It really shows just how well this city can work together.
Yeah,
it's
amazing.
It can.
Yep.
Look at the names on the NFRC, and when you go in the office there and look at Las Vegas Events.
Absolutely.
A lot of heavy hitters.
That is so true.
Yeah.
And not everybody pays attention to that well, and it shows. But, I mean, you guys have a magic there. I mean, it's like everybody – it's a competition, but everybody's on the same team. And
yes, that's the truth.
It's like rodeo. So, all right.
Notice that about your city. People loan each other stuff. They never let a guy hang as long as.
That's right.
You'll get your salt and pepper back, man, when you give it to your neighbor here in Vegas. You'll get it back, I promise. So, Steve, obviously, great run going with Orleans, and this is the one that I don't know how this all came about, but how did this transition go?
I'm still trying to figure this one out.
Yeah, all of a sudden, Gaughan starts building his own casino, and you go too. Let's take a quick pause. We'll return in a few moments.
Howdy, I'm Bob Tallman, and this is NFR Extra.
Each year at Cowboy Christmas, more than 250,000 country western shoppers mingle with NFR contestants Flint Rasmussen and the best junior cowboys and cowgirls in the world. There's no place in sports where your rodeo heroes find time to meet and greet their fans 9 to 5 every day. Cowboy Christmas. It's shopping, live music, rodeo, and so much more. Book your reservations and find out more at nfrexperience.com. Cowboy Christmas. It's all here.
Hi, I'm 8-time world champion bull rider Donnie Gay, and you're listening to NFR Extra.
We are back with Steve Stallworth, General Manager of the South Point Arena and Equestrian Center. How does that transition go from you guys doing what you did at Orleans, and now Michael says, hey, I'm getting out of here, I'm going to the south end of the strip? How does all that, where's the story on that?
Well, I tell you, it's one of my favorite stories ever, and I mean, it's one of those legendary stories about Michael Gaughan. So we opened the Orleans Arena in May of 2003. In about 2004, and we had this, we kind of came out of the box strong at the Orleans Arena. In about 2004, he said, I think I want to build an equestrian center at my new hotel, the South Coast. If you remember, this was the South Coast back then.
Yep.
Now, I'll tell you, I didn't even know what an equestrian center was. But I had an assistant manager at the time, a guy named Tim Lanier, who now runs the Cowtown Coliseum in Fort Worth.
Damn.
But Tim knew what an equestrian center was. He was from Fort Worth. And so we got on the phone. We started calling every equestrian association in America, every promoter that we could think of in the equestrian industry, and just said, hey, here's what we're thinking. What do you guys think? You know, blah, blah, blah. Almost all of them unanimously said, bad idea. Vegas is too far for the equestrian industry. It's too hot. And there are way too many distractions for these horse shows to be successful. So, of course, I reported that back to Mr. Gaughan, and he looked at me and he says, well, he goes, I'm going to do it anyway, so you guys better figure it out. So,
thanks for your help. All right, when do y'all want to start?
That's right, exactly. And I've always said it about Mr. and Mrs. Gaughan. Not only did they build something or envision something that would be great for our property, they envisioned something and built something that actually is great for our city. They've brought a whole new genre of events, a whole new discipline of sports, you know, to our city. But anyway, so fast forward a little bit. I was in on that on the ground floor, and it was exciting. And you know, we actually, you know, had a team at the Orleans that was working on content, working on design, all those things for the South Point Equestrian Center. And then in the middle of all that, he decided to merge with Boyd Gaming. So we all became Boyd Gaming employees, and they had a different kind of way about how to do things. So my assistant GM came over here, ran this building. I stayed at the Orleans. And then shortly after that, Mr. Gaughan separated from Boyd Gaming. That story is pretty well documented. He traded in all of his Boyd Gaming stock and just kept the South Coast, but he had to change the name to the South Point. So when that happened, I pretty much had to make a decision. Do I stay at the Orleans Arena, which is the building that I built and I loved and was familiar with? I mean, I had so much equity in that industry. Or do I stay with the guy that I love and the man that I love and the person that I wanted to be with? So I chose the man, even though the industry was very unknown and foreign to me. And the first 6-8 months, I was like, man, what did I get myself into here? But I can tell you this, fast forward.
Was it cold after, I mean, was the relationship of that cold, you know, I mean, with you leaving and doing that?
You know what? Boyd Gaming was a little surprised that I left, to be honest with you, because I mean that was just the world that I was in, and you know, had a lot of equity in that building there. Yeah, but working for Mr. Gaughan, I mean, the value of that can't be understated, you know, and being able to wear jeans and boots and cowboy hat to work every day, that sounded kind of cool too.
Right on.
And I tell you guys, fast forward, you know, I think for the last probably 4 or 5 years, we have been considered the premier equestrian facility in America. And, you know, we're proud of that. We're very, very proud of that. And a lot of our team that was at the Orleans came over here as well. And we're very, very, very proud of that. And this year we'll host about 44 weeks of just equestrian events.
Nice.
Yeah, not to mention all the other events we do as well. So it's been a great run.
Place stays busy.
What was it like doing the jet ski challenge? The jet ski. we were talking about that earlier today with Daryl, the dirt.
Yeah, we had Daryl Mosier on the podcast.
Daryl Mosier. Daryl's the man. Daryl does our dirt too. He's the man.
Oh yeah, and we were laughing about that, and I said, I saw a picture of jet skis in that arena. How in the hell did y'all keep that one?
It's funny. It goes back to what we were talking about. I mean, when you open up a brand new arena and a brand new area, I mean, you got to do whatever you can. You got to be creative to put content in here, you know. And that was an event. We had dates, and we said, hey, let's do it. So we put 660,000 gallons of water in our arena, 3.5 feet deep. And had jet ski races for 2 days, and it was amazing.
Was it?
But again, you know, just trying to be creative, trying to do things that weren't going to go in any other arena. I mean, Mandalay Bay and the MGM weren't going to let 660,000 gallons of water go in their building.
No. Where did you tank it in, or did you just literally leave a valve on?
Oh yeah. Let me tell you what. And the problem wasn't getting the water in. That was no problem at all. The problem was getting it out, because the county would only let us dump so much back into the system at a time. So it took us about 4 days to drain it. So yeah, and it was good for one time, but that was a one and done deal, boys. We're done with that one.
Yeah, I love those events. We're never doing that event again. You've been heading up a facility now for 20 years, whether it be South Point or Orleans. How has the business, and I know it's changed, but I'm just curious on your perspective, how has it evolved from, you know, sitting in your position? How has it evolved dealing with promoters, sponsors, ticketing? I mean, have you seen a good evolution in that 20 years?
Oh, 100%. I think a couple of things just off the top of my head that stand out. Again, I'm just talking about my 20 years. I'm not even going back 30 years.
Yeah.
But in the live entertainment space right now, there aren't that many players like there used to be. You know, back in the day, I might have a hold for a concert with 5 different promoters that were bidding for that one artist to play my building.
Wow.
Wow.
Those days are done. You know, it's Live Nation now, and it's AEG for the most part.
Yep.
So there's so few promoters for the same amount of content that we used to have back in the old days. Certainly all of the digital media now, and you guys are a part of that. You know, it's amazing now. I mean, there are a lot of shows now that go on sale that don't even buy traditional media anymore. You know, back then you always had to have somebody on your team that knew how to buy media, knew how to buy TV, knew how to buy print, radio, outdoor, all those kind of things, exactly, and those relationships with the radio station. So certainly the advertising, I'm telling you, 30 years ago, it cost more to advertise for a show than it does now.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
100%.
I wonder about that, and especially like an election year like this. Can you imagine trying to do promotions? You know,
been doing it for 20 years, Robbie. It's tough.
Yeah, and you guys in Nevada, you've seen it. You guys have evolved with your digital media and social media and all the things you're able to do now, and you know, database management and emails and website. I mean, it's just amazing. So, you know, certainly those 2 things really stand out to me in our business. In the equestrian world, it's still a very operationally run business model.
Wow.
With very few exceptions, you know, in the traditional arena business, it's very, very marketing and sales driven. I mean, 90% of the business is focused on that. In our world, it's just the opposite. We're still very, very much operationally driven. You know, there are a few real marketing and sales driven organizations, but for the most part, it's still very operationally driven. It's a heavy labor operation still. But, you know, our business also from the Orleans and traditional business model is we don't do a lot of what we call retail events or consumer events. You guys being in the rodeo business, it's very consumer driven, right?
Yep.
You sell a ticket, somebody comes to your event for 3-4 hours, and then they go home. You know, in our world, we want somebody to come to our building for 3, 4, 5 days and then go home.
Yes, I see what you're Yeah, it's less spectator-driven and more competitor-driven.
With the word
Correct.
participatory.
So that's what we want. Participatory. That's a good word too. Yeah, we want those participatory events.
Why would you use that big word on me?
Another big word, Robbie. Yeah, we've used a lot of big words here, man.
Google it, Robbie.
Yeah, I know Joe Bumgarner. Y'all can stop. He's my friend.
My man Joe. He is the best. I don't know if you know, Nevada, we have a PRCA Hall of Famer, PBR Hall of Famer, Pendleton Rodeo Hall of Famer, Red Bluff Rodeo Hall of Famer.
Son of a gun.
That's right. Joe Bumgarner, who's a former bullfighter, runs all of our back-of-the-house operations, and
I didn't know that.
He's a superstar.
Yeah, I met him when I was just getting started. Yeah,
he is the best. Joe is the king. There's a whole chapter there. We got to get Joe on here.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, we definitely got to get Joe on.
Joe would be a great one, man. Joe might be one of the best athletes I've ever been around. And I mean, you think about these bullfighters and being great athletes. Joe's a great basketball player, volleyball player, golfer, tennis. I mean, you name it. This guy will beat you in any sport there is. And yet, I mean, I think that's partly why
I know, it's almost like he doesn't work at it either, because I know he likes to drink beer with us and hang out.
That's right.
What's cool about Joe, but unfortunate, if you look at what's happened with BFO, he's the kind of guy that would have been marketable because he's got personality, he's got all these things that would work. And it just sucks for some of these guys that were, bullfighters when with what's happened today, he didn't get his spotlight like he should. It's time to take a little break. Wherever you listen to the NFR Extra podcast, whether it be on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, Google Play, or even YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. And let us know what you think of this episode or any episode by leaving a comment.
Hi, this is Derek Stevens. I'm the owner and chief executive officer of the D Las Vegas. This is NFR Extra.
We are back with Steve Stallworth, general manager of the South Point Arena and Equestrian Center. So back to Steve, back to your business model. So your whole goal, and I'm glad you're bringing this up because this is the difference in something like a Thomas Mack Center opposed to what you guys got going on. You have housing, you got people where they're going to stay. There's things that they can spend money on. So, can you expand a little bit more on that of like what those events are, how do you go about, what's kind of your strategy? Is there some sort of, you guys go out through the year? How do you fish events? I mean, I know you were taught to pick up that phone and call. So how's you done that? How have you done that?
No, well, I think it all starts that I'm evaluated every year, Nevada, by how many hotel rooms we book. And our hotel room bookings are directly related to how many stalls we are able to fill with horses. There's a correlation there. So, we are going after the biggest and the best participatory events in the country. We're bidding on them every day. We don't obviously compete with anybody in Las Vegas, but we're competing with cities and counties and states. And we're privately owned, where most of these venues we compete against are, like I said, city, county, or state-owned. Fort Worth, for instance, is the monster in our industry. They have a thing called the Texas Events Trust Fund that, these events can tap into. If we lose an event, it's typically to Fort Worth or Oklahoma City. Very, very strong, Western lifestyle markets. Their communities get it, they understand it, and it's in the central part of the horse country in America. We still compete a little bit with Scottsdale, Westworld, which is a huge equestrian complex.
It's owned by Barrett Jackson.
That's right. Yep, the city actually owns it, but Barrett controls all of their key dates. You're exactly right, Robbie. Wow. You're exactly right. And like I said, their city gets behind a lot of their events as well. So, and we are still considered kind of a boutique property. We really only have 3 arenas and 1,200 stalls. Oklahoma City has 3,000 stalls. Fort Worth can get up to 3,000 stalls. Jeez. They have multiple arenas, multiple space. Scottsdale, for instance, probably has about 8 to 10 arenas there, even though most of them are outdoors. They have just huge, hundreds of acres. Our entire casino and equestrian complex sits on about 68 acres or so. Those properties are huge. So for the size a venue we have, we're going after all that we can to bring in bodies, to bring in competitors that fill stalls, fill hotel rooms. So that's pretty much where it all starts for us, Nevada.
Yeah. Then
making Ryan happy.
Yeah.
That's right. Making Mr. Growney happy as well. That's right. Another NFRC committee member now.
Let me add something real quick.
That's right.
Hey, Robbie.
Go ahead.
I wanted to, because I think you'll agree with this. After interviewing Growney, and I've got to interview Growney quite a few times on different perspectives and things like that. And then, talking to Steve, and I know it's Steve, but I think for you, Robbie, you might agree with this. But if you think about who Michael Gaughan hires, think about the personalities that we get to talk to with Steve, and Growney. I mean, honestly, Steve, there's a brand here, right? There's a brand of like personality that he hires, and honestly, after talking to Growney the way we have, and we dive into all kinds of things with Growney. Same thing with you. You guys resemble something that Gaughan obviously sees very important in people and how you guys handle stuff. I mean, I'm just sharing that kind of that brand that you represent for him and Growney. You guys are very similar.
Well, I appreciate that, Yvette. I appreciate that, and I tell you, I will tell you this too. And I know you guys have had Ryan on here before. When Ryan came over here, it changed everything for me, because Ryan was in the Western lifestyle, worked in the Western lifestyle. He knew a lot of our customers. He knew a lot of our sponsors, and it was immediate credibility when he sat in that chair. And, and it still is to this day. I mean, he has great relationships. He's involved in the Rancheros, Vistadores, and Ryan has really followed in Michael's footsteps on the rodeo side. I don't spend as much time on the rodeo side as those two guys do.
You can't. I can understand that. I mean,
right.
So many different equestrian events.
Yes, exactly right, Robbie. And you know what? And that is their passion and their love, and they're knee deep in it, and that's great. And and I'm on the fringes of the rodeo world, but all other equestrian stuff, I'm knee deep in for sure. And we love the Western lifestyle, what we call performance horse events, which are really rodeo type events, team roping, barrel racing, reining, cutting, rein cow horse events. Those performance horse events are really, I think, where we shine here as a venue.
Stalls back there. I went walking back through there this year, right before the bullfight, and there were stalls back there I've never even seen. That's place. I got back there in y'all's office, and I went walking, and hell, I was lost.
You get lost back there for sure. That's funny.
I've never needed anything. I got to tell you, I've never needed for anything in that arena. Whether I was working for Tough, I was doing the World Series when we did the bullfights there. Whatever I've ever needed, leadership there, you can just tell it's good, because every person there, they're the same thing we talked about earlier with Lucia. They always want to help you, because a successful show means we come back. A successful show means the people in the audience are having fun, and that's what it's about. And I've never heard, "Oh, I can't do that for you. Oh, I can't do that," anywhere in that casino. And
that's great. We have a saying here. We call it FAWTSY. FAWTSY, find a way to say yes. And it doesn't mean that it's free, and it doesn't mean that we can do it right away, but we're going to try to find a way to say yes.
So what goes on for you in those 2 weeks during December as the NFR is taking place? What's going on in your backyard or your business of things, Steve?
Yeah, you bet. And, and I mentioned it earlier, Nevada, and I know you guys talk a lot about in your meetings there at Las Vegas events about signature events in our city.
Yes, sir.
And I don't think anybody has benefited more from signature events in our city than me here at the South Point and when I was at the Orleans. And, the NFR, of course, creates a whole thing going on, and we host the first week of the National Finals Rodeo, the PRCA convention, so the Pro Rodeo Cowboys Association convention, for those listeners that may not know who that is, which is just a great way for us to kick off our week with their Hall of Fame and their dinners, awards, banquets, and the back number ceremonies and all those things. Yeah, it's just fantastic. And then we roll right in.
Show. I mean, that's where the rodeos are booked.
That's right, exactly. It's almost like, for some of your listeners, it's the IOFI of the rodeo business. That's where that business happens. And then from a venue standpoint, we roll right into the Benny Binion Buck and Bull and Horse Sale, which is a great tradition in the rodeo community on that Thursday. Then we have Stace Smith's World Bronc Futurity the very next day. And having Stace, who's been stock contractor of the year, more than probably 10 times, runs that event, and all that money and all those proceeds go to the Binion, or the Hall of Fame there for the PRCA rodeo. So then we roll into what is been documented as the second richest equestrian event in the world, which is the World Series of Team Roping. So that starts on that Saturday, runs for 7 days. Last year, the World Series of Team Roping paid out $13.5 million over 7 days. So it's a pretty just amazing operation. It turns regular Joes that just have 4 great runs into temporarily rich guys, man. It's a fun run. 5,000 ropers, 3,000 probably 4,000 horses that come into our city. We house about 3,000 of them right here on our property, and it's just an amazing, amazing operation.
Man, so it sounds like no downtime for you during that time. That's you're just as busy as Mr. Growney.
Oh, crazy! The good news is I take the day stuff, and then Growney takes all the night stuff. So it's actually a pretty good working relationship.
Man, that's awesome.
What you want to hear is ding, 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 ding.
That's right. You're exactly right, Robbie.
And heads in beds, man. Right. So one more question before we
ding, ding, ding.
we let you go, Steve. And this is just a simple question. What's the
Go, I like it.
No, we can talk, Steve. There's a lot more angles we could go with Steve. I promise you.
This week.
I love it, Robbie. We got to grab me and you and Joe, and we'll have some cold ones to keep the conversation going.
What's your favorite part about your job?
I think my favorite part is just having a different challenge every single day you walk through the door, Nevada. I mean, I just can't imagine, working at a bank or working somewhere where just there's a repetitive nature as to what happens, Now, we have a repetitive nature that we try to create here in terms of our culture and our values and, consistent communication and those kind of things. But the different people, the different personalities, every single day there's something different. And I think it juices me up, my staff, every day. I can't wait to get to work. I mean, I absolutely cannot wait. It's just a great time, and I've been very blessed that for 30 years in Las Vegas, I think I just have been blessed to be here in the 30 most exciting years that we've ever had. So, and I'm not done, brother. Looking forward to the next 30 years as well.
Yeah, no, man, that's awesome. Well, hey, Steve, thank you. You're an executive, so I know you got things going on, and you.
Well, we love having you guys here, and as you know, Mr. Gaughan, cowboy hats are welcome and appreciated here at the South Point. So make sure to share that with all your listeners as well.
Definitely. Thank you, Steve.
Right. All good. So, guys, stay safe, and we'll be in touch.
All right, brother. That's it for episode 49. And 1,000 thanks to Steve Stallworth for joining us on NFR Extra. And up next, on episode 50, Bill Neff, Vice President, Consumer Marketing at Yeti.
For more information regarding the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo, visit NFRexperience.com and follow Las Vegas NFR on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube.
NFR Extra.
All dirt.
All rodeo.
All year.
Gotta make it out to Vegas, where the big boys roam, with the rovers and the racers and the bulls and the broncs, and the ladies in the skin-tight wranglers and the cowboy